This is KZU, Pacific Grove, Monterey Bay Public Radio. My name is Mae Brussell. The program is second part of World Watchers. You can call in 375-3082. The following hour, World Watchers, is made possible in part by ARC Laser Optical Technology, a leading manufacturer of microcomputer peripherals located in Scotts Valley. For more information, call 438-7400. And before we take the calls, I'll say that the views expressed here are those of myself and do not necessarily reflect the views of Kazoo's staff or board of directors. I cut that music short because there's already a call. They hung up. Okay, 375-3082. They called too soon and hung up, so you'll have to call again. Maybe from Santa Cruz and didn't want to hold the line. Tell me what you found in the news that was interesting. How many of you listened to the broadcast last week? Last week, it seems a week ago yesterday, about 14 hours. And I want to mention also Chiquish. Many of you listened to her on Kazoo. She's on from 12 to 1 on Wednesday. She had a very serious automobile accident and luckily is alive. Her very close friend Ann was killed in the crash. And I offered to take her program on American Indian Affairs this Wednesday and the following Wednesday on Kazoo. So from 12 to 1, I'll be taking Chiquisha's program for her. Hello? Ringing, no more trouble. Let's not have trouble with that board again. We don't want that. Everything should be working, and I don't know why it... Okay, now somebody tell me what's happening to the board. Everything should be just fine. And should I try it one more time? The light's on. No. Guess what happened to me? I came home this weekend to open my front door, and the lock didn't work, and I had to get a locksmith today, and there were pebbles in the lock. That's inconvenient. I think of that when I think of the board. We had trouble for so long, and now the board should be A-okay unless somebody at Kazoo tells me they had trouble with it this week. 375-3082, call me. And tell me if you think you can get through. I don't want to go through this anymore. We sailed through for quite a few weeks without any problem. So let's try this call. There is a ringing on this board. I cannot believe it. I cannot believe it again. If there is somebody from Kazoo that had trouble with the phone calls this week and haven't told me, that happened twice when I came in. Hi, what's wrong with your phone there? Here comes Barry. There, listen to the thing. Okay, I got an expert here. Here he comes. He's working overtime. Yay, da-da-da. Save me. What'd you do over there? Was it on the wrong switch?
Just turn this down a little. Let's try it again.
Hello? Hello? Oh, clap.
There's nobody there right
now. Okay, now call again.
Wait.
We got an expert here. This is like Tinkerbell. Clap your hands if you want her to live. Okay. Hello? Barry? We have a new program director here, and how many weeks have you been at the station?
About 5.
About 5 weeks. You weren't here when I went through this series of problems.
No, you're right, I wasn't.
Oh, my God, it was a nightmare. Every week it was something different, and there was a poltergeist here.
No.
Call in 375-3082 while Barry tests the system. He's the expert, and I know I'm not doing anything wrong. Huh? Okay, tell me, is it 3082 around here?
Yeah.
Okay, now, what pixies are... You can't imagine what we went through for a whole series of things. Now, let's see. Hello? Can we hear? Hello?
Hello?
It's working. No. Put it down.
Okay. I was just testing to see if I could get through, and I did. I have no question.
You have no question, but you got through. I mean, you don't think of anything on the program? What caught your fancy this last...
The other day, I was in the bathroom in Santa Cruz at Zachary's, and I saw a notice up for the Christic Institute.
Oh, wait, pardon me 1 second while Barry's here. What did you do, Barry? What did you do on the board here? There was something that was... Wait a minute, let me just see what he did here, because there's something that...
Well, when they call in, I just leave this down...
Until
you turn that... When you flip that on, and then after that's on, turn this up.
Okay, but what's this that you did?
I just turned that down a little bit.
Okay.
It seems to have something to do with it feeding back.
Can they fix it during the week?
Well, we'll have Tom check it out.
Okay, now. Okay, tell me what you found in the bathroom.
In the bathroom, I found some toilet paper. No.
Toilet paper.
No, I found this notice for the Christic Institute. I thought it was kind of odd that it was hanging up in the bathroom, but anyway, I was just I was kind of interested in what it was, and it reminded me of your program. And since I'm not one of those people that tunes into your program every week or whatever it is.
Don't admit it.
Okay.
Okay.
It reminded me of your show, and so I tuned in tonight, and there you were talking about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, about the Christic, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you don't listen every week, huh?
No, not at all.
Well, you should.
Well, I'd be interested in hearing more about it.
About the Christic Institute?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness, so many people know about it. What can I do with you? Should I send you some literature? I mean, I don't know if people, they're so familiar. It's a lawsuit placed by the Christic Institute is a law group in Washington, D.C. that represented Carolyn Silkwood and represented persons killed by the Nazis and Klan in Greensboro. And they took on two plaintiffs, Martha Honey and Tony Abergan, who were bombed at La Penca bombing in Costa Rica. The purpose of the bombing was to kill Eden Pastora, a CIA person who had left the Contras and wanted to separate himself from them. And 8 people were killed there, and many people were bombed at this particular press conference where Pastora was turning his back onto the Contras and getting away from them. He said they were run by the Somoza's army and the CIA and not really a people's movement. So the Christic Institute, Danny Sheehan, took on the case of these 2 people who survived the bombing and got information of the connections of drug running, political assassinations, planned coups, and he named the suit. The bombing took place in 1984, and by 1986, in May of 86, in 85, it took place. The Christic Institute had 29 defendants that were named as part of a grand conspiracy to overthrow Nicaragua and create terrorism to kill the U.S. ambassador in Costa Rica and blame it on Nicaraguans so we could invade Nicaragua. In the process of developing the suit, they ran into the persons working for the CIA and the National Security Council that were named later when Eugene Hassenfuss landed in Nicaragua. They had identified the same people that became the stars of the Iran-Contra affair, John Singlaub, Theodore Shackley, Thomas Kleins. And investigating the bombing, they came into the people that worked with the CIA, Defense Department, and National Security who are into drug traffic, assassinations, and gun running.
I see.
And so this suit will probably go to court probably in spring or May or so in Florida. And it is a landmark suit because the Iran-Contra Committee wouldn't go into these matters. It's so sensitive and involves the highest echelon of our government right across the board, the Defense Department and the intelligence community and the Justice Department not going into the allegations of what they found and pretending they didn't exist, even through the entire Iran-Contra hearing where they had named these various people a year earlier. So that Christic Institute is the name of the organization in Washington. And if you're in Santa Cruz, look around. Don't look in the toilet, but look around Santa Cruz and find some literature because they have videotapes up there. Maybe somebody will call and you can see the tapes of what it is. They announced those this past week, and I think they show tapes, the Danny Sheehan and the group, and what their project is and who the defendants are and the plaintiffs. And if you're interested in that kind of material, you can follow it up. There's a lot of activity for them in Santa Cruz.
Okay.
So keep listening, and maybe you'll get some of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye. Okay. When he said he was reading something in the toilet, it reminded me of, I wrote a section for Irving Wallace's People's Almanac, number 2, the second volume, a section on Lee Harvey Oswald and the Kennedy assassination. And once I was in a bookstore like Bookworks or Brentano, and they were selling toilet paper, and there were pages of People's Almanac, volume 2, and I thought, oh, who's going to wipe their butt on what I wrote? That's horrendous. So you may go to the toilet and find Mae Brussell on your toilet paper. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, the trial is set for June 27th.
That's exact date?
Yeah.
June 27th. Okay, where in Santa Cruz could this listener learn more?
Well, he should go to a newsstand in the next couple of days. The front page cover story on Mother Jones for February is all about the Christic.
No, but that's not the point. The point is, where in his local area in Santa Cruz are there groups meeting? Is it listed in the phone book as Christic?
Coalition for Nicaragua has information on Christic. I've given them tapes before.
Name the organization.
What?
What name? Say it again.
Coalition for Nicaragua.
Coalition for Nicaragua.
It's on Front Street, down in what used to be the old Oh, God, I don't know the name of the building. It's in the same building as the credit union. The credit union's on the first floor, and they're upstairs.
Okay, so look it up in the phone book. Go down there. And that you made a good point. Danny Sheehan's on the cover of Mother Jones, so that will fill you in on the information. It's timely, and so they can get that on the stands right now. That gentleman can get it then.
2 questions for you.
Yes.
First one is, David Lifton wrote Document Addendum.
Yes.
Now, what's the basic thrust of Document Addendum? What's it covering and focusing on?
Oh, that's a great book. What David Lifton did was to go to the National Archives and get the meetings of the Warren Commission members from December. The stenographer typed them up from December 1963 to around January or February of 1964, before the Warren Commission took one bit of testimony from their 552 witnesses. And these are the conversations between Earl Warren and Gerald Ford of the Warren Commission, and Allen Dulles, and John J. McCloy, and Cooper, and Russell from Georgia. And you get the whole tone of how these people are going to cover up. They even have information of Lee Harvey Oswald's CIA numbers and so forth. It is the total scam. Before they take one witness, they've already decided the peripheries that they will have for the investigation when they take the hearings of these 552 witnesses. It's a very important book. It just shows the duplicity. And one of the subjects that comes up is, they said, what should we do with the documents after we're through with our work? Should we destroy them? And Allen Dulles said, no, we may as well print them because nobody will read them anyway.
So it was a published book.
It's a published book by David Lifton. It may be out of print.
It's out of print. Tom Davis claims you can't find it anywhere anymore.
Well, we could call David and ask if we could reprint it. I don't think he would mind. It's just a jewel. Okay, that's question one, real fast.
One. Now, I listened to about 10 hours of yesterday. I'm sorry that they didn't really give you as much time as they gave John or Barbara, but it was still very, very good.
Yeah.
And the whole thing with John Judge was fascinating. Now, he was offering tremendously interesting stuff on the rather Bush thing, and sort of pumping Bush up to stop being the wimp now, and now he's going to get back and be the tough guy thanks to Dan, baby.
Yeah.
And this whole thing of Dan Rather being in Dealey Plaza as the film drop on the other side of the Triple Underpass.
Uh-huh.
Now, when he attended the screening of the Zapruder film,
yes,
and came out afterwards and said the president's head went forward.
Yes.
Now, when was that?
When did he make that sound?
When did he go to that screening? Was that weekend?
No, I forget the date. Also, Dan Rather was in 2 other cities at the time. I forget if John mentioned that. Dan Rather was in Dallas. He also was with, an old Democratic politician, and he took the train or went right into Dallas. And he also was somewhere in Dallas where he jumped a cab and went right to the news department. And I have 3 different accounts of where he was when Kennedy was killed. Yeah, he was at 3 different places.
Where he really was.
Yeah, when he made the soundtrack that the president had went forward, I don't remember the date. I just remember that he made it.
Okay, but that's when John was saying that basically that's where he got his oomph forward into the press corps in the White House?
Well, yes, because he was one of the key people who, along with Walter Cronkite, the man that everybody trusts the most in America, forget the great Cronkite, they won for president. They all got their impetus. Jack Valenti became head of the motion picture czar, or the motion picture screening, and Bill Moyer was press secretary for Lyndon Johnson. Yeah. They all got their expertise off the Kennedy assassination.
Okay, so that's basically where John feels that he really made his comeuppance to get more of a grip on Mr. Media Man.
Well, there's 2 ways to look at it. One is that if I tell you what you want, I'll make my comeuppance. The other is that you wouldn't be in Dallas if they didn't know what you were going to do.
Yeah.
It was a prearranged assassination. You weren't going to let a funky newsman miss the point.
Sure.
So I don't think, a lot of these top newscasters that are on the talk shows and radio, they field questions just like the World Series. They're just geniuses at carrying questions. When they're difficult, they pass it off. They hang up on you. Yeah. They haven't read it. They don't know what it is. And I think that they're honed in media schools before they even get in the position of power to be in Dallas when the president was killed, because all the power structure knew what was going to happen. So you just wouldn't leave it to him. Say, look over the grassy knoll. Look at all those people running. Look at the smoke from that rifle. Oh, look at them picking up shells in Dallas. Oh, my gosh. Oh, I saw them go up, over this fence. He was already picked before he went to Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't increase his posture because he said the right things. He was there because they knew what he would do.
Right, right.
So that's the way I see it.
Okay, one last thing. Now, you had said a while ago that you had attended something where John Stockwell was speaking.
Yes.
And you asked him something about the Kennedy assassination, which you felt he gave a real scurvy answer.
No, I didn't ask him. I asked him about the importance of Fritz Kramer. Did he know him in the Pentagon, and the importance of Henry Kissinger, because he has a plastic-bound speech that he goes city to city, and you can't interrupt it or ask questions, and he opens that plastic and reads those pages, and was at the Monterey Institute of Foreign Studies, which is practically all intelligence and military out here, and the students got to go in free to hear John Stockwell, which I thought was interesting, with John J. McCloy on the board and one of the bigwigs there who was CIA director, and the subject, I asked him about Fritz Kramer, did he ever see him in the Pentagon? And he said, he knew of him, but he wasn't important to what was going on in Central America. His shtick is Central America, and Henry Kissinger was appointed in 1983 for all of Central America. And here you have Ickley and Singh, Laub, and all these people. So then 2 weeks later, when I read Evans and Novak that Fritz Kramer was being kept by Carlucci in the National Security Council, and he'd been there all the time while Reagan's working with the Contras, I sent him that article and called him, and then he'd never returned my calls. So that's, just figure out, this is like the Iran-Contra hearings in front of us saying we'll only go into 1985 and 86. Stockwell is what I call a professional liberal who will tell you the crybaby story about how many people were killed, but won't let you get to the jugular of the killers.
Right.
And that's the only, if you don't get into Ickley and Kramer and Kissinger and who these monsters are, you just can't stop what they're planning. Their low intensity is going to go on for years, or as Ickley said, we'll spend $9 billion a year surrounding Nicaragua. And then if the government says, no, we can't afford that, then they just have to invade like Grenada.
Sure.
So that's the opinion of Stockwell is taken upon what I know and what they're willing to learn or what they're willing to not let their listeners know.
Yeah, yeah.
And you have to ask these questions over again to every candidate or everyone comes through and blow their cover, because there's a lot of professional liberals out there. I say Noam Chomsky and Stockwell and these group that played the liberal chic, or Alex Coburn. Imagine that cockamamia answer he gave. And he's the darling of the lib press.
Pretty slimy.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, okay. I mean, the reason we don't go forward, the reason we're back 20 years ago was the Tet Offensive. Now it's another problem in Central America, is that people refuse to face that these are man-made problems, and people sit in the Pentagon and make the plans. Hello, you're on the air.
Hello, Mae.
Yeah.
I have an interesting article from the San Jose Mercury News, January 28th.
Okay.
There's Ed Ward, a key prosecution witness against alleged cocaine kingpin Carlos Leda Rivas, was hit with a $2.96 million lawsuit by the Internal Revenue Service a day after he took the stand.
Wait a minute. I missed that one. January 28th?
Yes. Page 16A, Mercury News.
It's already in the cycle bin. You'll recycle. You'll have to send it to me. Can you send it to me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Do you have my P.O. box?
No.
22511.
22511?
Yeah. Carmel, 93922.
93922.
Yeah, Mae Brussell, like Brussels sprouts.
Okay.
Now say it again. Say what the article said again.
Okay. Ed Ward,
yeah,
key prosecution witness against alleged cocaine kingpin Carlos Leda Rivas, was hit with a $2.96 million lawsuit by the Internal Revenue Service a day after he took the stand, officials said Wednesday in Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, boy. There's a suit against Rivas in Jacksonville, Florida?
No, a suit against Ed Ward, the key witness against him.
Oh, yes. Okay. And he worked and knew about Rivas, and so the punishment for exposing Rivas was the $2 million lawsuit.
Yes.
I get it. And you see, Carlos Rivas was hand in glove with this Prince Borghese that I talked about, and with that operation, the same people with that death list in Italy, and with Otto Skorzeny, and with the death squads down in South America. the ones that worked with our CIA and worked with the Contras and so forth. That's very important. I'd appreciate your sending that. Sometimes the editions of the Chronicle, I guess of all the papers, are different than what we get here. David Emery will call and say, hey, did you see this? Look at this article. And I'll look at the same paper, at the same page, and it isn't in the edition I get on the Monterey Peninsula.
Yeah, well, this is buried. It's titled Elsewhere.
Elsewhere.
It's on page 16A.
Well, I'll tell you, I could have missed it.
I'll send it to you.
Elsewhere, 16A. Thanks a lot.
Sure, bye.
Okay, yeah. These are, in fact, those death squads that I'm talking about, and Carlos Rivas is one of the important ones to the P2, and this international national group who are specialists in that low-intensity conflict. Hello, you're on the air.
On this Rappaport thing in Switzerland and that Mies in the pipeline.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it was the Merck last week, they said that when Rappaport was interviewed by some news outfit, and asked about, knowing Mies and that, and he says, no, I didn't even meet him. I didn't even shake hands with him.
Oh, didn't shake hands. He was the banker for all of this.
Right.
The San Jose Mercury had an article saying interviews with people familiar with the McKay investigation depicted a 6-month whirlwind effort in 1985 by Wallach, and that's Mies's attorney. This is San Jose Mercury, January 30th. Rappaport, whirlwind efforts in 1985 by Wallach, Mies's attorney, and also the attorney for WEDTEC. Rappaport and senior White House officials to breathe life into the pipeline venture, and he was the banker for it, which the National Security Council apparently saw as a step towards Arab-Israeli cooperation. Translated means millions of bucks in their pockets. They don't care who's killed.
Well, they were going to repair it with our money.
You build it with our money. Yeah, if it was bombed, then the taxpayers would send it back to Israel to pay the insurance for what they bombed. I mean, it's total insanity. What do you think about this?
Of course.
Huh?
Of course. I think it was the Sunday Examiner Chronicle thing. They had an article about the Christian fundamentalists battling with the Catholics down in South America for the, hearts and minds and that. And a lot of people were kind of nervous about the conservative political bent of, like they said that Falwell had gone down and personally endorsed Pinochet in Chile.
Oh yeah.
And
so does the Vatican, though.
And they also mentioned a thing. They said that the Mooney organization owned one of the very largest banks in Uruguay.
They own Uruguay.
Yeah, that one kind of surprised me.
Oh no, the Moonies have owned Uruguay, the banks and everything down there. And down in Uruguay, he invited the Sikhs, the ones that blew up Air India and killed Mrs. Gandhi from London. The training and the habitat for those Sikhs is down in Uruguay under the arm of Reverend Moon and the Mossad. If you wanted to see another crazy relationship, I mean, if it just boggles the mind. There's only one translation. Sometimes I wonder. I know it is a fact that after World War II, and this is very controversial, that a lot of people had numbers put on and said they were Jews and left the camp and therefore were put in strategic jobs with a lot of money and military decisions, and people have believed that they're Jews or Mossad, but I believe very seriously they could belong to this well-planned arrangement that Heinrich Himmler had starting in 1943 and were incorporated into these organizations because Moon wants to take over all the religions of the world. And what would the Mossad be doing in Uruguay with Reverend Moon and the Sikhs? And they're very thick down there, and they train the Sikhs. Huh? The strangest bedfellows. The absolute strangest bedfellows. Yeah, Reverend Moon is a big challenge, and he was very big in Bolivia with Klaus Barbie, too. And he was meeting, again, the death squads and Mr. Pack. There's a big controversy coming in now because the U.S. government wants to get rid of Noriega in Panama. They want to get somebody more likely to turn their back on the Panama Treaty and give Panama back to the United States. And they want to nudge Noriega out. And I read this last week that Reverend Moon is coming to his aid, that the Moonies are big in Panama, and that they're supporting a country that the United States has to get out. So this is really the first time there's a conflict between the Moonies and Washington.
Or about how they were talking about how Noriega had been selling arms to leftists in other parts of South America.
And Noriega was offering to do hit squads and assassinations for Poindexter and Admiral North. In fact, I think I mentioned it yesterday. I might have on KKUP. He was supposed to be doing assassinations, and Poindexter says that's fine. Then he sends a memo to North. No, we can't do that. We're not supposed to be doing assassinations. After the National Security Council will hand it to the Enterprise. Well, the Enterprise they were talking about was Theodore Shackley and Thomas Kleins, and the same people who were down there helping off Allende and the Phoenix program in Southeast Asia and over in Iran. The death squads are the Enterprise. But now Moon has come to the aid, and one other group, whether it was the Mossad, I think the Mossad and Moon are holding up Noriega, and he has all those notorious bank accounts there, like Swiss bank accounts. So they're supporting him, and the government wants the geography back, so they're nudging him. So this is going to build to a very interesting story in Panama.
I wonder how many of them he'll try to take with him.
Oh, goodness. It's so terrible. It is really terrible. I think you long listeners can enjoy this kind of programming much more than new listeners. You'll just have to bear with us and pick up the names and the countries. When I started my research 23 years ago, I wasn't familiar with all of these encounters, and you just have to slowly take whatever you can get during the day and pick up these pieces of information. But yes, the Christian fundamentalists are very strong down in South America, and the Vatican doesn't like competing with that. And they're fighting for the turf of the far right down in South America and Central America too.
Okay, and one thing that I'll take off is any more about this character Rappaport, and I know you mentioned a little bit about Shimon Peres, but it sounds like these two characters go back a long way.
Well, I think they do. There isn't that much about Rappaport, but I was reading something, I think it was just this morning, that said that the Mies-Iraq pipeline and Shimon Peres and Bechtel could become as big as the Iran-Contra story.
Yeah, that Bechtel, that was real interesting, because I know you've talked about them numerous times.
Yeah, last November. In fact, I thought that Caspar Weinberger quickly resigned from the administration because of being a chairman and a high official at Bechtel Corporation when this story broke last November. See, by the time we get a story in the major media, it's been brewing for 2 months or more. The powers that be and the special prosecutor already getting a whiff of the smell. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Caspar Weinberger says, I'm leaving. My wife is sick. I got to go take care of her after all these years. And being with Bechtel and George Shultz with Bechtel, and here we have the Defense Department and WEDTech and the Attorney General in on this can of worms. It's just unbelievable. Yeah, so we'll follow that story. But there's a lot in the media now, so pick up what you can, and then we'll follow the rest, little pieces as they come out. Rappaport, I'm not familiar with all of his background, but there's a little bit coming out every day.
And I thought Perez was supposed to be a liberal. And you say he was down in Cameroon just before they set off that bomb?
No, right after the explosion in Cameroon, he flew in, had an appointment with the president of Cameroon, and just coincidentally came in with 17 doctors that went right over to Cameroon. The president hadn't even looked at the territory where these 18 black people and animals were lying very dead. He was entertaining Shimon Peres while the doctors were over there. And
well, yeah. I read where the physicists were extremely puzzled about the dynamics of the event and said that they could not place the sequence of events with any kind of a known physical cause.
That's right. There's still somebody has sent me some
gas buildup. They said was a lot of gas.
Yeah, there's been a lot of controversy, and somebody has called in, and I've saved a lot of articles, and there's nothing conclusive. And then last summer, there was a conference in Hawaii of all kinds of experts on geology and science and chemistry on a special convention on the explosion in Cameroon. And from the people that were attending these meetings, it didn't appear there was one Israeli, and they were the people with the 17 doctors there. So I thought that was very...
Nothing about anybody carrying a Geiger counter around.
Oh, no, I don't know about that. But listen, thanks a lot for calling. Okay. Hello, who are you? You can call in now, 375-3082, and there is no problem finding news and scandals in the news these days. Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi, Mae. I just read in Harper's Magazine, February, good article on Hearing Nothing, Saying Nothing, the Iran-Contra investigation that never was.
Oh, boy. February, it's on the stands now?
Yeah. Harper's Magazine.
Who wrote it?
Well, it was sort of a BS session with Louis Lapham of Harper's Magazine, Leslie Cockburn.
Well, there he is again. Leslie, oh boy.
Joe Conason, Village Voice.
Conason's a good writer.
Sam Dash, who was chief counsel to the Senate Watergate Committee. Walter Karp, political historian, author of A History of the Carter-Reagan Era. And Daniel Shore, who was about the least critical of the president or the committee.
Well, Daniel Shore is so locked into a time warp, he still says that Oswald killed Kennedy.
Yeah. I was very disappointed. I mean, not to say that he wasn't critical. He did make some critical remarks.
Well, you couldn't help but make some. I mean, 6 months of garbage, you'd have to say something was thrown out.
But, well, a few, especially Lapham, was really down on what was left out.
Yes.
The drug connections and everything else. And Shore would always go back to, well, but they did do this, and Reagan's presidency has been hurt by this.
Oh, very.
And yeah, that's one thing I'd say. I think he was hurt by it all, but and they go through a selected chronology, and I would say on May 15th last year, when Reagan declared he was definitely involved, and it was my idea to begin with in aiding the Contras. Lapham said that you would have thought that would have been it, that the people and the press would have really jumped on Reagan at that point.
Yeah.
And nothing happened.
No, the press is so much behind him. You don't have to worry. Speaking of the press, tomorrow night on television, there's going to be a special of Seymour Hersh on whether we had to invade Grenada or not, a critical analysis of Grenada.
What?
I just read it this morning in the paper.
PBS? Or?
Yeah, no, I think it's Channel 9.
Yeah.
And he's going into the Grenada. He does a good job. Let's see if he mentions Michael Ledeen and Robert Brown of Soldier of Fortune, who were the first people there going through Maurice Bishop's papers. These great agent provocateurs, survivalists, paramilitary, disinformation rightists were there, and no people were allowed on the island for 2 or 3 days, where I think the C-130s brought in those nicely stacked weapons. We were seeing all these Russian weapons that Maurice Bishop bought, but if you remember the Iran-Contra, they only bought Russian weapons from behind the Iron Curtain, and that's so they can stack them all up and say the Ruskies were here.
Yeah, I think they were bought from Poland or something.
Yeah, but they take them behind the Iron Curtain so that if they drop anything on the way out, that you leave a trace that a Russian was behind you and you had to run.
Yeah, there's another thing I wanted to bring up too and then get off was last night I happened to be watching some TV, and this was after the Super Bowl, and ABC, I don't know if it's on tonight or tomorrow night or something, but there's a made-for-TV show that's going to be on ABC one of these nights coming up, and they showed a preview, and it was about National Guardsmen or Army Reserve soldiers in Honduras, and they're down there, they're supposed to be kind of like on maneuvers, but they're sort of having a semi-good time, and then suddenly there's bombing and all that, and there's like something real is happening.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really strange that this show is coming on right around the time of the Contra aid vote.
Oh, boy.
I mean, does that sound like just a coincidence or what?
Oh, yeah, they're being invaded by the Nicaraguans.
Exactly. I mean, they did mention Honduras, and the voice was on these soldiers, they're...
And it was real. Here they come.
That they're supposed to be down there just on maneuvers, and...
and then they're attacked by the evil empire.
Yeah, I just said, what is going on
You see,
here?
you don't even, it's so close to the vote, but what you get is the promo tells you a little bit so that people begin to say, hey, vote for the money. Look what they're doing to Honduras.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the plan.
We were talking last week about subliminal, just in the promo. Forget the program. The program's probably maybe the day of the vote, but just saying that over and over.
Yeah.
Have you listened to Ted Turner's CNN between programs, they have little flashes of news and scenes picture the Pope or Nancy Reagan. And then there's an over voice, and Reagan says, "Tear down that wall, Mr. Gorbachev."
Oh, one more thing quickly. Last week on KKUP, I hate to mention, another station, but, on Thursday they've got a show on called Reality Check, and they had a guy on, a Jewish guy, who knew a lot. He went over the history of how the state of Israel, he seemed to know his stuff. He went into how in the 30s there was a group of rich Jewish people in Germany that were sent down to Israel basically by Hitler to help start Israel up.
Yeah, the purpose was to get the British out of the Mediterranean.
Right.
So the Jews got their homeland, and Germany gave it to them. That's right.
Yeah, he's a good researcher. I can't think of his name. He mentioned that he'd been on other radio shows.
Yeah.
KGO wouldn't put him on, though.
Yeah, I believe that. No, they won't. They're mostly Jewish up there, and you can't talk about Israel.
Yeah.
That's verboten up there.
Okay, well, I got him right.
Thanks. Okay.
All right, bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Okay, now I don't know who that was, but there are some stations, there's small stations where you can talk about Israel. Hello. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, Mae?
Yes.
Excuse me, I have to turn my radio up because I can't hear you over the phone.
Okay, well, don't... Okay.
All right. Concerning what he said about that Jewish fellow on that program last week, I heard it too, and he was very, very good.
He was good? Did you get his name?
And I don't remember his name. However, I don't remember along what lines it urged me to call in, but I did call in and talk to him after he went off the air, and mentioned to him what you've been putting out about the likelihood that was a... he mentioned Dananu.
Oh, yeah, Vananu, yeah.
And
so what did you...
And I said, in regard to that, have you thought along the lines of that being a neutron explosion, as Mae Brussell has been hypothesizing? And he said, no, I haven't, but I know Mae. He said you were a friend of his.
Oh?
And I said, and he said he was going to get in touch with you.
Well,
I said,
was he from the Vananu committee up in Berkeley?
I don't remember any of the details of that. No, but he's somebody who is very, very knowledgeable on this subject, and he was very bright. And he said he knew you, that you were a friend of his, and that he would give you a call about it. And I urged him to do that, to get that information.
Oh, I did get a call. Maybe somebody knows him. There's a Vananu committee up in Berkeley, and I got a call this week. They're very close, and they have all this information on Israel, and they get the Israeli press and so forth, and they heard that I had made these connections of the neutron bomb, and the guy was really excited. He was going to send 4 tapes.
Well, that's the guy. That must be the guy, and I'm the one that told him to call you.
Because I haven't... Well, the one who called me didn't know me. So this guy probably
he probably told someone else, yeah.
So he told someone up in Berkeley because he didn't know me, and you brought up the subject. They're working specifically on the subject of Vananu.
Right. Well, I had to bring it up off the air because I wasn't able to get in on the phone line during the airtime, but I caught him after he went off the air.
Yeah, well, they were really excited, and they never had put together the fact that the suppression of Vanu's rights or not being seen could in fact have been because he told the London Times about the neutron bomb.
Right.
And I told this guy he's going to get 3 or 4 tapes. The committee up there is going to order. I haven't opened my mail for a week because there's just too much. I don't even want to look at it, but I'm going to open it, some of it, maybe Thursday.
Well, I hope this fellow does get in touch with you because he's very, very, very sharp.
They hadn't made the connection that they knew everything about Shimon Peres, and they knew about the explosion out there because they watched Peres, but they didn't make the connection of how much Vananu had said. Even the San Francisco Examiner referred to the neutron bomb. So they were interested in that, and they'll get back to me. And I said the reason they're treating him so badly is that they don't want Israel to admit that they killed 1,800 people.
Right.
And were black.
Well, if you have the time, you could find out who this fellow was. I'd urge you to be in contact with him.
Well, I don't have the time. If people contact me, but I don't go around anymore. I used to, but I have so much to do. It's if they want.
I know.
Yeah,
well, if you Larry Grant is the host of that show, and he could tell you who the fellow was.
Well, I'm not looking for people because in the time I spend going looking for them, I learned something new.
Well, maybe he'll get in touch with you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, I if somebody were talking about the neutron bomb, I'd get in touch with them, but the mail problem, I thought I'd have that solved by the end of the year, remember? Well, I don't. It's a calamity. 375-3082. Hello, you're on the air.
Oh, hi, Mae. It's Val.
Val, hi.
I'm calling because we are having, maybe someone's already called about this, We are having a vigil tomorrow at noon.
Well, evidently you don't listen to World Watch. Is I already announced?
I have to divide my loyalties between you and KPFA.
No, you don't.
Anyhow, May.
No, you don't.
So somebody called in about it.
Yes, I read the announcement.
Good.
For tomorrow
that's wonderful.
at the post office. Yes.
Yeah.
And
great.
Shirley, I announced it, and
I'm so glad.
But you must.
No, I listened to Bill Mandel's show, and I'm sorry, I just have to do that every Monday night. And then I listen to you.
Well, tape it off the air.
Well, I don't have that kind of arrangement.
Okay, then listen.
May, last night on KPFA in the middle of the night they were playing your tapes. Did you know that?
In the middle of the night?
Yeah. I have it by my bed, and I was half asleep, so I couldn't be very intelligent about it. But they'd had 2 of your recent tapes.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I don't know whether they were from,
KKUP, you mean?
Or from down here, or what.
Was it KPFA?
I think one was there something on the 20...
Was it KKUP or KPFA?
I don't know, May, but they were, I know your voice.
Yeah, well, this is one of the problems with my mail. The program's being played on more stations. I was going to cut back last October, and now I'm having a problem.
Well, they got hold of them and they played them.
And every one of those programs brings 40 more letters.
Yeah.
So did you like it? Did you listen or go back to
sleep?
Well,
I was sort of, you know how it is in the middle of the night when you wake up and hear, and I thought, oh, that's May, and then I woke up again the next hour.
And there's May again.
They had you again.
Well,
that's great.
I sure work overtime. And it's all free. I never get paid. You ever seen such a slave?
Well, listen, but loads of people hear you.
Yeah, I know.
May, I'm glad.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thanks for reading it.
Okay, so people
Bye-bye.
go tomorrow from the post office.
Great.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Now, people shouldn't have divided loyalty. They should just play the tape recorder so they don't miss World Watches, because that's the news you will never hear again or may hear in the future, and you'll hear it first on Kazoo. So if you listen carefully, you know what's really going on in the world. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, the women are finally getting through.
Yeah, there's always men. Yeah.
I know.
Well, that's interesting. You know, when I have the potluck dinners, there's usually one woman and myself, or 2 women and myself, and they're all men.
Well, I always listen to you.
Good. So they're women callers tonight.
Yeah.
You like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Listen, is there any way to get tapes of that 14-hour show?
Yeah, they were taped off the air, and they will be available. They're going to be typed up so you can choose which ones and see what the price is for all 14 hours. So I don't have the information yet.
Oh, good.
But there will be tapes, and then you can select if you want all of it. Some of them, like Martha Honey, she was live. No, Martha Honey, she was live from Costa Rica. And Sarah Nelson and Danny Sheehan. I didn't hear Peter Del Scott. I was waiting to hear him. Did they put him on?
I don't know. I can't get that station.
You can't get it. No, another friend was in Carmel, and they couldn't get on the line either. It's funny where it travels. Some days it was scratchy.
Well, I've tried to get that station before, and I just can't get it.
Yeah. So I'll have to get more information about them and what they'll cost and how many there are once you cut down the commercials and the music and all that.
Yeah. May, Senator Inouye was speaking today in the Senate.
Yes.
He made a little speech, and he's rescinding his $8 million deal for Jewish schools in France.
Oh, he has to do it under the table like Ed Meese, huh?
And he made all kinds
He rescinded and said, Israel, you can't have this now. Why? What made him change his little mind?
Well, he's gotten so much criticism of it.
Well, of course.
And, of course, he has all kinds of excuses.
Yeah, well, the feeble excuse was that he had a person interested in Israel who gave him $1,000. You know, you don't give $8 million for 1,000.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
It has more, I believe, to do with paying Israel off for not getting involved in the Iran-Contra scandal.
I think you're right.
For being the fall guy. Inouye kept all of Israel out of the hearings, and then all of a sudden hands him $8 million. That's called hush money.
Sounds like it to me. Well, they're not going to get it now.
Well, what he wanted to do was to legally attach it onto some bill which had nothing to do with the United States, and they all do it, but not a country. Here we have Jonathan Pollard spying for Israel, that scandal, and we have the Iran-Contra using Israel for various operations that we do, and I believe it was a way to legally put it on the books to pay off. And what they'll do, there's this black budget that the Defense Department has, like $24 billion a year, so they'll take the $8 million out of that.
Yeah.
We never see it anyway.
Yeah. Well, he kept saying that it was all done out in the open. He wasn't being sneaky or anything.
Well, that's what I mean. He didn't want the hush money to look like it exchanged hands, like in the washroom of the mafia gang, in Vegas. So he made it all legal that we should give money to an Israeli school in Paris when we need home for the people that are cold, and education and preschool care for working women, and the children. 8 million would go a long way if we set up those buildings. There'd be a lot of volunteers if they had a place.
All this criticism he got really hurt his feelings.
Well, I think people are waking up. Don't you think they're getting more responsive to these things?
Kind of sounds like it, yeah.
I'll tell you.
I thought that he was just ignoring it and nothing was going to be happening, so I was really surprised to hear him today.
It's really hard to be an Indian giver.
Listen, I heard also that Don Edwards is going to have hearings dealing with these latest complaints about the FBI spying on all these groups.
Oh, yeah, he's former FBI, and he doesn't like that. So he's going to have hearings. Well, he better wait till Reagan's out of office because you're wasting your time. He never jumped into the Western Goals operation when they kept files that were ordered to be destroyed.
Right.
So it's great that he's going to have hearings, but we all know who they are.
Yeah.
And what they're doing, the thing is remove them from public office. And then the other point is get rid of William Webster as the CIA director because he set that up as the FBI director.
That went on when he was the director.
Exactly, and he set that all up. And the point is, I think I mentioned before on World Watchers that he wanted a new bill that the CIA director that usually leaves with the discretion when a new president comes in, he points his own. He wants to stay on. Well, he wants to stay on because there's so much dirt from these past 7 years that they don't want to bring somebody else in. And he's the first to go because he allowed all this bugging and wiretapping. He's no different than J. Edgar Hoover.
Isn't that the truth?
They've just grown a little more sophisticated, and they look a little cleaner, and he harasses the blacks, and he's a racist, and he had this ab scam where he targeted a handful of nebs, I call them nebs, these poor minor criminals that aren't really big ones, and lets the big ones get away with it. Like the Ed Mises that he doesn't investigate the Iran-Contra. He discontinued the Florida investigation. And I think Webster's a disaster.
Yeah.
And all of that goes back to him. So let's get rid of him.
How long was Bush head of the CIA?
January 1976 to around October of 77.
So he was only there a year.
He was a year. He was there the year of the Orlando Letelier murder in Washington and the Air Cuba where 74 people were blown up, and that was CIA related. That Ricardo Morales, I think I mentioned him the other day on the radio, he mentioned that the CIA involvement in blowing up Air Cuba, and then the gratitude he got for mentioning that was to be blown away off a bar stool in Florida. Mr. Monkey Morales, they called him Ricardo Monkey Morales, went to the great beyond with Mr. Zorinsky and Dan Daniel, and they have a lot of company, but Bush was director. There were a lot of deaths, the anti-Castro Cubans in Miami.
Dan Daniel's death happened just right before the Senate. The Congress came back because they were talking about the first day.
That's right, the very first day.
I think the second day was the funeral.
They lowered their voices and spoke about our dear brother, Dan Daniels, and they didn't say that he was opposing the appointments of this Special Operation Counterinsurgency Force and was opposing Meese and Frank Carlucci. They just said, we miss our brother, Dan Daniels. And it came just at the height of this controversy, and he was the most vocal opponent of this man that Meese and Carlucci want appointed. And goodness knows Meese and Carlucci are part of the secret team.
Maybe that's why not more of our senators and representatives are speaking up.
Well, I think they take
note. Maybe they know their fate if they do.
If they can add up arithmetic, it's already got past what they can count. If Senator Frank Church and Representative Pike and Keith Alver, if they just had their brothers in the Congress who took any position at all against the power structure, they know that, and they also know who funds their campaigns. Mm-hmm. So, Daniels died just the day they came back.
Right.
Yeah, well, listen, thanks for calling.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye. Okay. Now, we just have a few more minutes. Time is getting short. 375-3082. Hello. You're on the air.
Is this Mae?
Yes.
Oh, I wanted to just make a couple of comments. First, if you haven't read Joan Didion's book, Miami, yet, it shows that she's been struggling to kind of get to more current information, but her book on Miami is really quite interesting with some...
Is it fiction or nonfiction?
It's nonfiction.
Yeah, it is?
And it's out in hardcover. But one thing she made a reference to that towards the end of it that made me sit up and take notice is she makes reference to something called the Santa Fe document.
Yes.
That was written in 1980 by a whole lot of right-wing people, including Louis Tans.
Oh boy.
But some group that was nominated as the Inter-American Security Affairs Commission or something, another one of these self-appointed groups to set policy.
Yeah.
And that it was used or was viewed at the time as kind of like a blueprint as to the sorts of things that Reagan was going to try to accomplish in the Western Hemisphere. But one thing that stuck out was that it makes it very clear, she quotes it, it makes it very clear that they were going to do their best to counter what they called liberation theology of that Catholic communal movement in Latin America. And one thing where I think maybe the Vatican, through its Cardinal Ratzinger, is actually in league with and not in competition with the Moonies, is the following, that the liberation theologists who were bishops and people in pretty important positions starting in Peru have all been replaced by the Pope.
Oh, boy.
Via this guy Ratzinger. In fact, one of them, the last one to go in Peru, was the Bishop of Cusco, or the Archbishop of Cusco down near Machu Picchu. And
is Ratzinger in charge of the, which part of the Vatican is...
I don't know. I don't know much about him because I don't know things about the Vatican or how they run. But anytime something dirty's going on, old Ratzinger is the guy who's doing it.
I know. He's sort of the Alexander Haig of the Vatican.
Right. And anyway, the Archbishop of Cusco supposedly either had an attempt on his life or some kind of a violent threat against him, and he apparently saw the handwriting on the wall, and then I don't know if he was killed or if he volunteered to step down. So then Peru, which started the liberation theology movement, ended up with no liberation theology people, and the people in Brazil, the church in Brazil picked it up.
Yeah.
And about 2 years ago on NPR, when NPR radio had a little more guts than a lot more guts than it has now, with Daniel Shore and whatnot there, but they had an interesting piece on how the main liberation theology guy in the church in Brazil, whoever was the highest in Brazil, was invited to come to Rome to have his knuckles wrapped.
Oh.
And Pope Ratzinger was going to wrap his knuckles, and the other Brazilian bishops came to his defense, and they said, no, he's not going by himself. You're not going to get him in a room alone because we know what happened to that cardinal in Cusco.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't let him out of their sight. I think 2 or 3 of the Brazilian bishops went almost like linked arms.
Oh, Tancredo Neves, who was the first democratically elected president in Brazil after Frank Carlucci and Vernon Walters put in the military dictatorship, Tancredo Neves had dinner with the Archbishop, and then that evening he got sick and was in the hospital and had 6 surgeries without any anesthetic.
Right.
They kept cutting him like an animal, and he died like a dog.
Right. Well, it was around that time when these Brazilian kind of left-wing or liberation theology types
were coming out. There was also another priest there that they ordered silence for 1 year. He couldn't talk for 1 year. He was ordered to the Vatican, remember?
Yeah. That might have been the fellow, because at any rate, a couple of bishops went with him and said that they weren't going to let Ratzinger have him alone in a room, that they wanted to be at his side as a witness for everything that went on.
Boy, it's really scary, isn't it?
At any rate, also at the same time, there was a weird article on the front page of the Wall Street Journal that said the Vatican, didn't mention any names, but said the Vatican, through Arno de Borschgreb and Michael Ledeen, were sending money to squelch liberation theology in Peru.
Oh, boy. So when did you see that?
Pardon?
When did you see that?
That was in either mid-December, either 85 or 86, right on the front page of the Wall Street Journal.
Oh, boy.
So in my left-hand column.
Did you save it?
Pardon?
Did you save it?
I didn't, because I didn't put 2 and 2 together then.
Yeah.
And since it just struck me out of the blue, and since then I've never forgotten that article.
Yeah, well, you know what? Give the approximate date.
I would say like December 15th, 1985 or 86. It's a December 15th around.
I could probably look up in the library because the Wall Street Journal is indexed, and I could look up de Borschgrave. That's easy. There's a lot of Ledeen's.
But it was an article about Ledeen, like who is this Ledeen person?
Oh, I may even have that in my files.
And that was like one of his accomplishments, that here he is with the Borshka from the Mooney paper.
Yeah.
The Vatican is using Mooney people or Mooney sidekicks to squelch liberation theology.
And Ledeen is part of the Mossad. He's a Jew that represents the Israeli interest, Michael Ledeen.
Well,
it's so horrendous.
I had never heard of Ledeen before reading that article.
Yeah, well,
it just struck me as so strange.
Well,
I've known of
Ledeen since the Pope was shot. This was 1981 of May, because he and Claire Sterling were writing the disinformation that the Russians and the KGB were behind the shooting of the Pope, and he was working the disinformation with Arnaud de Borchgrave. He also, at the time of the election of Ronald Reagan in 1980, the fall of 1980, just when people were ready to vote, it was Ledeen with de Borchgrave together who wrote in the New Republic a long article about Billy Carter and going to Libya and being with Gaddafi, and that was set up by Borghese and the Permindex group, and they wanted to do everything as well as the stolen Carter papers and sabotaging the rescue mission. Ledeen and de Borchgrave were very effective in controlling our media and information.
Yeah. Well, I know they're big buddy with de Borchgrave is a big buddy of that guy on Jim Eason on KGO. He's always.
Oh no! Oh, that's right.
Jim Eason is always interviewing de Borchgrave like he's some kind of a
celebrity
or a philosopher king.
You know, de Borchgrave is the Belgian aristocracy, the monarchy. There's always the monarchy behind all this, wanting to get back into power. And his sister is married to the doctor of the Queen of England, of the royal family. And at the time that Roberta Calvi was dangling, the member of the P2 was killed off the bridge, and the Great Britain, British Hambro Bank, had investments with Banco Ambrosiano and with Roberta Calvi. It was the evening, I remember the time when that gentleman went allegedly through the window and sat on the bed of the Queenie and talked, and nobody interfered, and there were no charges. And I knew that he was there to discuss the banks or the bank situations and the tremendous investments of the royal monarchy tangled into those Italian affairs and the P2 branch, the Masonic Lodge in London. And then when I read about de Borchgrave's, relative, sister married to the doctor, the Queen, and all that de Borchgrave does in Europe, and with Mr. Moss, his co-partner of disinformation, and they worked with Newsweek and so forth, I thought, well, there was a good way to get into the Queenie's bedroom. Dress as a nurse's assistant, But the answer is, you can't come to a hard conclusion, but it certainly put de Borchgrave right where he belongs.
What struck me as interesting was when I read that article, I thought it was just maybe the Pope and Ratzinger trying to get rid of some pesky ground-level left-wing clerics in Latin America. But when I read the Joan Didion book, near the end of the book, it mentioned the Santa Fe document, and on its agenda, it was Thames and the boys.
Well, I'll have to look that up. Listen, my time is up, so I got to run now. Thank you. Thank you for calling, and I appreciate the calls, and a lot of calls this evening, and a lot of interesting people, and you're sure keeping up on things. I never take Joan Didion seriously, but maybe I will get that book and see what she has to say about Miami. Now, this concludes this part of the program of World Watchers for the past 2 hours. The previous hour of World Watchers has been made possible in part by ARC Laser Optical Technology, a leading manufacturer of microcomputer peripherals located in Scotts Valley and available by calling 438-7400. My name is Mae Brussell. The program is World Watchers. I'll be back with you next week and share some more of this interesting news with you.